So introducing myself, my name is Alan Lopes. I am in the Superintendency of Operations and Critical Events, and I would like to thank you, all of you, for being here with us in this meeting, in this initial meeting for of launching this new project that is a project to develop the dam safety tool. That is a tool to analyze the consequences of dam breach and the needed actions. It was already tested in a trial in an agreement that we have with USACE since 2015 about dam safety. We have done some case studies, and they will be shown for you with more details on the screen. So we check it that there are some advantages and some difficulties in the use of this software. This is a similar software that user already use some similar softwares, and so it's a public software as Hack has, and this is a new one software. It's developing, it started right now, so and focus it in this dam breach. So this mean aims to present this to all of you, for our guests that we invited here, for those that are acting in dam safety. And our goal is to give a feedback to USACE about the scope of this work trials right now. So kindly, from all the discussions we already have, they could get some financial resources, American ones, around the $500,000 to develop this in the coming years. And we thank you very much for the effort that may help our country a lot, and also other countries. The idea is that this is a public use software, as it is HackHRS, HackHMS, and another softwares that USACE already use. And what we want, our wish, and what they also want is to have this software aligned to Brazilian needed, as we already have this partnership, this long-time partnership with USACE, and already have the first agreement that was signed in 2013 and lasted until 2019, and now we are in the second agreement, 2020 until the end of 2025. Early 2026. So due to this long trajectory and partnership that we have, Brazil will be, we choose Brazil as a case study for this platform to develop this software, this system. So the idea is that after this introduction round, they will present the proposal of the software, and then we will open it for discussion. And I really would like to hear from all of you what you think about their proposal. So this is the introduction, and now I'd like to give the floor to Chris. So thank you for being here. I know your agenda is very busy, but it's very good having you here with us.
Então, meu nome é Cristiane Batiston,
So my name is Cristiane Batiston. I am the Deputy Secretariat in the Special Secretariat for Growth in the Presidency of Republic. We are responsible for the articulation and monitoring of the Ministry of Infrastructure with for federal government. And together, today we coordinate the Federal Committee for Dams,
onde os ministérios que têm atribuição
where the
nessas áreas
ministry have the responsibility in this area of dams, and they also discuss this in public policies. So this study is very important for us, so we can help this to prioritize the projects, mainly the resource. Thank you, Chris. I would like to transfer for the Colonel Alexandre that kindly came to this meeting. It's very important for us because USACE, it's a body of engineers for U.S. Army, and the Brazilian Army is an important arm for this, and we are all civilians, so it's very good to have a representative of the militaries. So it's very good for having you here.
Novamente, boa tarde a todos. Eu sou o Coronel
Once
Albuquerque.
again, good afternoon, everyone. I am Colonel
Departamento de
Albuquerque. I am
Engenharia
representing
e
the Department
Construção do
of
Exército
Engineering
Brasileiro,
and Construction of
sediado aqui
Brazilian
no
Army
QGX, né?
that is
Eu
here
vim a
in
convite
KJX.
do Usace
I came
porque
invited
o
by
Exército
Usace
Brasileiro
because Brazilian
iniciou
Army
programa de
has
intercâmbio
an
com o
interchange
Exército
program
Americano, do
with
qual eu tive
US
a honra
Army,
e a
and
sorte, a
I was
oportunidade de
honored
passar
and
2
lucky, and I
anos
had the opportunity
lá
to spend
no
2 years there
Usace em
in
Vicksburg,
the
Mississippi.
Usace
Então foi uma experiência muito
in
boa na
Mississippi.
parte
So it was a
de
very
navegação
important experience,
e vim como
navigation
ouvinte
part.
aqui para,
So I
de
came here
repente,
just to
futuramente,
hear, so
participar de
maybe
outros
suddenly participate in
projetos
another
ou dar alguma
project,
contribuição do
or
Exército
give
ou
my
simplesmente
contribution
para
from the army,
adquirir
or
mais
just
conhecimento.
acquiring more
Obrigado.
knowledge from you. Thank you.
Bom dia, boa tarde a todos. Eu sou
Good
o Coronel
afternoon,
Williams,
everyone.
Adílio de
I am
Defesa
Colonel
e
Williams,
Exército,
and
junto à
I'm here
Embaixada dos Estados
together
Unidos
and
aqui
work
em
together
Brasília.
with the U.S. Embassy here in Brasilia.
Venho conhecendo a ANA
I
desde
know ANA since
2015 e em nome
2015,
da nossa
and on behalf of
embaixadora
our
Elizabeth Bag, que
ambassador
daqui a pouco vai retornar para os Estados
that in
Unidos para a
few
mudança da
hours
nova
will
administração
return to the
presidencial
U.S.
dos
for
Estados
the
Unidos.
changing of the office in the
Gostaria
U.S.
de expressar a
I'd like
minha
to express my
satisfação em estar
satisfaction,
juntos
my pleasure,
aqui
my
com o nosso
gratitude for
pessoal
being together with
do
our
US Army
people
Corps of
from
Engineers,
U.S.
particularmente o
Army
Dr.
Corps of
Calvin Creech,
Engineers,
que a gente
maybe
conheceu
Calvin Creech, that
desde
we
início serviço aqui no
we
Brasil.
met
E
each
como
other
o
since I
Coronel
came to
Albuquerque
Brazil. And as
falou,
Colonel
é
just
uma
say
grande
here,
honra para
it's
os
a great
Estados
honor
Unidos
for the U.S.
E particularmente
and
o Exército dos
particularly
Estados Unidos
to
trabalhar juntos
U.S.
com a ANA
Army work together with
nessa
ANA
área de
in this
águas
area
e
of
saneamento básico. É
waters
uma
and
coisa
basic
bem
sanitation.
importante no
It's
mundo
something
inteiro,
very
mas
important
particularmente
in
na
the whole
região a
world,
gente
but
entende
mainly in this
que
region, we
nós temos
understand that
muito
we
a aprender de
have a
vocês,
lot
os
to learn
senhores,
from you
pelos desafios que vocês têm
by the
que às vezes ficam
challenges that you
parecidos
have
com o
that
nosso,
sometimes seems to
lá nos
our
Estados Unidos
challenges in
e
the
essa troca
US.
de
And
informação,
this exchange of
experiência e
information,
entendimento para
experiences, and
melhorar
understanding to
a
improve
gerência
the
básica
managing,
de
the
águas
basic
e
managing of
navegação
waters and navigation
dos rios, tudo isso
of
que a gente tem
rivers
que
and
enfrentar
everything that we
é
have
muito
to
bom
face.
para os
It's very
dois
important for both
países. Então,
sides, for
muito
both
obrigado pela
countries.
recepção
So thank
e
you
estar juntos
for
com os
receiving me
senhores.
here, and thank you for allowing me to be here together with you.
Muito obrigado pela presença, Coronel. Importante para a gente estar
Thank you. It's very
com o
important
senhor
for
aqui,
us having you here.
fortalecendo essa
It
relação que a
will
gente já
strengthen
construiu
this
ao longo dos
relationship
anos.
that we have already
Passar
built
para a equipe
along
do
the years.
Usace, a
So
gente
I
volta
will
para a
transfer
equipe aí da ANA,
to
pessoal que está online.
Usace team, and then we come back to Ana.
Boa tarde.
Good afternoon.
We appreciate this opportunity. I am Clay McCoy, the project manager here for the Brazil program in Brazil. And like Colonel Williams said, Calvin Creech is back. And he is going to lead this project for us. He'll be our technical lead here in the country for the DORT program. I'll just say a few words because we have a lot of good stuff to come. This is the big deal here is this is the first time that the Corps of Engineers has been able to bring money to the table to support ANA or any Brazilian agency. Usually you pay us to provide support, and this is the first time when we've been able to bring that support to you. So this is a very big moment for us. We're very proud of this opportunity. The DORIC program is a new pilot program. So this was one of it's a $10 million program, and we got $400,000 in the first year of the program. They have started the second year RFPs, request for proposals. And so we're very excited about it. We have our team, well, I'll save that for Calvin to introduce the team. Just excited to be here. We're supposed to complete this project in 1 year, so we'll be working pretty fast. And we appreciate the opportunity to continue to work with ANA.
Muito obrigado. Meu nome é Calvin Creech, eu sou engenheiro civil com o Risk Management Center no USACE. Eu cheguei aqui em 2012 e faz muito... A Agência Nacional da Água e Sanitação Básica é uma agência muito querida para meu coração e está muito bom para voltar aqui trabalhando com vocês de novo. Essa área de diminuição de risco no barragens, área muito importante para o mundo inteiro, e a gente vai falar sobre essas ferramentas e a colaboração que a gente pode ter com essa agência é muito querido, muito importante.
So it's very important for me being here. It's something very important. We have worked on this project, and now our team, after we finish these introductions, we will have the presentation. So let's make all the introductions here, and then I will transfer the word to Gabriela. So let's continue with the
One more little
introduction.
thing I wanted to add. I think this was pretty neat. When President Biden was down here a couple of weeks ago, he was briefed on this particular project. So this has made it all the way to the White House. So really big news.
Gustavo, sou nosso convidado também, eu passo depois aqui para o pessoal da casa.
So Gustavo is our guest. My name is Luiz Gustavo Baena. I am as a deputy manager in the supervisor part in ANEL, National Agency for Energy, and the superintendency has the competence to take care of this dam safety issue and all the entrepreneurship and
Obrigado, Gustavo.
dam.
Dr. Bruno, nosso superintendente.
Dr. Bruno, our superintendent.
Bruno Rebouça, superintendente
Good
de Relações
afternoon,
Serviços
Bruno
Hídricos e
Rebouça,
Segurança de
Superintendent
Barragens,
of
Rogério
Hydric
Menezes,
Resources, is a
da
big name, and dam
superintendência,
safety.
com toda a
And
equipe,
from the
Rogério, vão se
superintendents with
apresentar
all
agora.
our team,
Mas nós
Rogério, and they
temos
introduce
uma das
themselves, but
incumbências
we
é
have
classificar as
some
barragens como tendo
competencies
potencial de ser
classify
citado
the dams
na política de segurança de
according to
barragens.
their potential, and if they
A
fit in the
ferramenta
policies
pode
of
ajudar
dam
bastante,
safety, and the
justamente na
two
priorização, como foi
can be
dito
very
pela
used
secretária
just in the
Cristiane,
prioritization that was said by
para que
the
a gente
Christian
possa tanto priorizar
Secretariat,
recursos, como
so we
também
can
ter avanços na
prioritize the
própria
resources
política,
and also
porque
move forward
a
in the
política é
policy,
de 2010,
because the
contudo, a gente ainda
policies
tem
from
massivo muito
2010,
grande de
but we
barragens a
already
ser
have
criado
an
no
asset
país.
of dams that need to
Então,
be
a
regulated in the
gente tem que
country yet.
buscar várias,
So we
tem que
needed
buscar, na
to,
realidade, várias
and actually we
estratégias
have
para
searched
conseguir
for many
avançar
strategies to
nessa,
move forward
nesse
and
ímpeto e
advance
conseguir
in
aumentar efetivamente a segurança
this
das nossas
time
barragens, principalmente
and
das grandes
increase the
barragens,
safety in
não
our
só do
dams,
setor
mainly
elétrico,
in
que a
the
gente sabe
big
que o
ones,
setor
not only in the
elétrico
electric
hoje,
sector,
né,
because
é
we know that
referência aqui no
energy
Brasil,
sector is a
mas
reference
principalmente
here in
nas
Brazil, but
barragens hoje.
also in
É isso, obrigado.
the other dams. That's it. Thank you.
Rogério Menescal, também
Rogério Menescal.
estamos trabalhando aí na parte de
We
segurança de
are
barragem,
working
acompanhando os
in
projetos
dam
da
safety,
USACE,
following the
muito aí
USACE projects. I thank you for the opportunity for being this
poder
project together with you that
trazer
can
novas ferramentas, né,
make
nesse
and
desafio
create
que
new
o
tools
Bruno
in
citou
this
aí.
challenge that
Obrigado.
Bruno has mentioned.
Boa tarde, eu sou
Good
Márcio
afternoon.
Bonfim,
I'm Márcio
trabalho com
Bonfim.
modelagem,
I work with
matemática de
modeling,
comprimentos de barragens,
math
uma
for
das minhas principais
dam branches. This
funções.
is one of the main
E vim
roles.
para conhecer a
And I
proposta,
came to know
agradecer
the
esse
proposal.
esforço
Thank you for
que tem
this
sido
effort,
feito pelo USACE,
the effort that have been
e
done by
colocar
USACE, and
a
also
nossa experiência aqui também
put
à
our
disposição para
experience
ajudar
here. Let
nesse
us
desenvolvimento desse
at your
projeto.
disposal to help you to develop this project.
Boa tarde, meu nome é Aline Costa, eu sou engenheira
My
civil.
name is Aline Costa. I am
Trabalho aqui na
civil
coordenação de
engineering.
regulação de
I
segurança de
work
barragem com os
in
colegas.
safety
Vim
dam
aqui para
regulation,
aprender bastante com
and I
vocês.
came here to learn a lot with you.
Boa tarde a todos. Meu nome é Elton
Good
Carneiro.
afternoon, everyone. My
Eu
name is
trabalho na
Elton
coordenação de
Carneiro. I work
fiscalização de
in
segurança de
the
barragens.
dam safety
Aqui
supervision.
na Agência Nacional de Águas, nós
In
somos responsáveis pela
in ANA, we are
fiscalização
responsible
das
for
barragens de
the
água
supervision of dam,
relativa
water
ao uso
dam
múltiplo de
related
excesso de
to
geração de
the
energia,
multiple uses, but
fiscalização em relação à segurança
energy
de barragem. Temos já há algum
source,
tempo
and we've
participado e
been
acompanhado aí os trabalhos da USACE
participating
aqui no
in some works of
Perfeito,
USACE
obrigado,
together with
Gustavo. Vou
ANA.
passar
So
pro pessoal
thank you, Gustavo.
online.
And now I
Tauana,
will transfer the floor for people that are
podia
online.
puxar a fila,
Tauana,
depois a
you
Fernanda.
could start, and then
E aí,
Fernanda.
enfim, quem puder ir se apresentando, hoje podia fazer uma
So
apresentação bem
introduce
rapidinho,
yourself,
pra
a
gente
very
passar
quick
para
presentation so we
apresentações.
can
Sou
start with
Tauana
our
Monteiro,
presentation. I am Tawana Monteiro, together with Alan. We are the manager of this contract with ANA-Usace. I thank you very much for being here, our colleagues of Usace.
Mas queria dizer que reconheço o
Unfortunately, I
esforço
cannot
que
be here,
foi
but I would like to tell you
feito
that
para que
I really
esse
appreciate all the effort that
a verba para
was
financiar
done to,
esse projeto
to grant
tenha
this resource so
tenha
this project
dado certo. Então, fico muito
could
feliz
work well. So
e não
I'm
posso
very
perder a
glad for that.
oportunidade
I
de
cannot
dizer
miss the
que
opportunity to
Clay, you
say
have some
that
homework to do, my
Clay,
friend, because your colleagues are speaking fluently. So
Boa tarde a todos.
so good
Meu nome
afternoon,
é
everyone. My name is
Fernanda
Fernanda
Abreu,
Abreu.
sou
I am
especialista em física
expert
da
in
ANA.
hydraulic
Hoje eu
research
sou
of
assessora da
ANA.
diretora
Today
Ana
I am the
Carolina.
assistant
Ela
of
é
the
uma das
director, Ana
diretoras que
Carolina.
está aí à frente
She's
da
one of the
representação da
director that is on
Usace.
the front of
Hoje
this
ela se
representation
encontra
of
de
Usace.
férias, então eu estou
Today
aqui em
she's on
sua
her
representação.
holiday, so
Boa
I am
reunião a todos.
representing her here. Good meeting to all of you.
E podem seguir aí, pessoal. Quem quer falar aí,
You
podia se
can
apresentar.
move forward
Falando,
and
se puder,
introduce
o Ana enquanto
yourself.
então online. Josimar.
Tá ok. Bom, meu nome
Josimar.
é Josimar, eu
So
trabalho
my
na
name is
coordenação de
Josimar. I
supervisão,
work
segurança e
in the
barragem aqui na
coordination and
agência, nos pertences
supervision
da
of
transição,
them
né? Sou aí, além de
here,
atuar nessa parte de
and
modelagem,
more than acting
documento,
this
como o João falou aí,
modeling and documents, I'm
essa
also a
parte de
curious
modelagem,
person
novas
for this modeling
metodologias e uma coisa que a gente tem
part
buscado
and new
bastante aqui na ANA para
methodology,
apoiar
something
nossos
that we have
avanços, né?
searched
Principalmente
to support our
na implementação da
advances, our
segurança e
project,
barragem, juntamente com
mainly
as
in the
barragens no Brasil.
implementation of
Considerando que esse
dam
é um trabalho
safety in
extenso aí que a
Brazil.
gente vai ter, muitas
Consider
grandes
that is
barragens
a
no Brasil
very
e as
large
metodologias que a
work
gente
we have
precisa
here.
hoje
So the methodology
precisam
that we
também
need
ser
today,
adequadas para essas barragens
they
pequenas
also need to
e
be
não
adapted
somente
to
para
the
as
small
barragens, né,
dams,
como a
and
gente
not only
tem
for the big ones
utilizado até então, desde o início da
that we
política de
have
segurança e
used
barragem.
it
Então, hoje
up to now.
vivencia aqui na ANA
So
essa
today
questão
we
das pequenas
see
barragens, é uma preocupação
in
muito
ANA,
grande para a gente.
we know that it's
Obrigado.
a big concern for us, this small safety, small dam safety.
não, Débora Tonelli.
Sim. Oi,
Ah, sim.
desculpe.
I'm sorry.
Boa tarde a todos.
Good afternoon,
Na
everyone.
verdade, estou participando mais como ouvinte
Actually,
do
I
conhecimento
am
da
just
ANA, porque eu estou,
participating as a
nesse momento,
listener,
fazendo
not as
doutorado,
an
mas
ANA
meu doutorado é a
server,
continuação
but
do
I am
trabalho,
making
né,
a
que eu
doctorship that is a
trabalhava com o
continuation of
Josemar lá na
my
parte de
job.
segurança de
I
barragens,
worked
com o
with
Alan,
Josemar and
com os outros
Alan
colegas.
in Anna and my other colleagues. So,
Pegando a palavra do Josemar, né,
so
realmente a
just
gente tem um grande
getting
desafio, principalmente quem trabalha
Josimar word, we have a great
com a
challenge,
simultaneous, pequenas
mainly the
barragens,
ones that
barragens
work with small
de
dams
recursos múltiplos, tem um
that
grande
need
desafio, porque as
multiple
ferramentas que a
resources.
gente
A big
existe
challenge because the tools that
cabem
we
perfeitamente para as
have,
grandes barragens,
they fit
porém,
for
quando nós
big
vamos
dams,
trabalhar com as
but
barragens
however,
pequenas,
when we
né,
have to
a
work
maioria
with
dessas
small
barragens a
dams,
gente
we
acaba
can see that most of the tools
meio que
that we have
superestimando
available, we underestimate
talvez
the
isso tenha prejudicado
damage,
de
and
certa
maybe
maneira
this have
o
harmed
trabalho
our
da
job
parte de
up to now.
modelagem
I work with the modeling
por
part as
acaso.
well.
Estive em praticamente todos os
Hackers,
cursos da Usace
I
na ANA
participated
nessa
mainly
área
in all
e também estou
courses,
curioso para a
workshops in
ferramenta de
ANA, and
gestão de defesa de
mainly in this
servidores.
management
Débora
tools that we
Tonelli.
have available.
Boa tarde, eu sou a
Good
Débora, eu
afternoon, I
participo
am
da equipe
Deborah. I
da COSEB,
participate
né,
in
da
the
coordenação de
COSEB
regulação
team, the
de
coordination of
segurança de barragens,
dam
e eu
safety
atuo aqui
regulation, and I
nessa
work
área de
here in this
classificação com as
classification area
modelagens de
together with
rompimentos, né, de
modeling
barragem,
of the
com metodologias
dam
simplificadas, e
bridge
estou aqui para
and the
assistir, né,
certified
as
methodology,
propostas da
and I'm here
Usace,
to
e
hear
agradeço pela
USAC
oportunidade de estar aqui.
proposals, and I thank you
Agora os
for
colegas da
the opportunity.
ANM, Renan
Now,
Soares.
ANM colleagues, Renan Soares.
Oi, estão me ouvindo?
Sim.
Você vê agora, então não estava conectado no áudio. Boa tarde, meu nome é Renan.
Good
Eu
afternoon,
trabalho
na
na
I
segurança, ou
work
superintendência de segurança
in
de barragem e mineração, na
Superintendency
SBM,
of Dam
na ANM,
Safety,
e trabalho
ANM,
diretamente com
and
a
mining
CVM.
also,
Então,
and I work
estou
with
aqui ansioso para
another
ver o que vai acontecer aqui nessa reunião
department, so I am
e espero que eu
excited
puder
to see
ajudar de
what is about
forma
to happen in this meeting, and I'm here at your
Fernando
disposal to
Ribeiro,
help if
ANM.
necessary.
Boa tarde a todos. Eu sou
Good
servidor da
afternoon,
ANM,
everyone.
na
I am the
Superintendência de Segurança de
ANM
Barragem, dentro da coordenação de
server, and I
departamento.
work with the dam
Sérgio
safety in
Cotrim, Casa Civil.
this department.
Boa tarde a todos. Sérgio
Good
Cotrim, trabalho na
afternoon,
Casa
everyone.
Civil, na
Sergio
equipe
Cotrin. I
Cristiano
work in the
Batistone,
office in the
no
team of
MIPAC, no programa de
Cristiano
aceleração do
Batistone
nascimento, com
in the
ação de segurança de barragens.
acceleration program
Ovidio Santos,
that
eu
we
não sei
have.
de qual
Ovidio
instituição
Santos,
você
I don't
não
know
está
from which
identificado.
institution because you are not identified.
Sou membro do conselho
I
da
am
Câmara
member
Técnica do
of the
CNRH,
technical
trabalho com
chamber
barragens há
of
alguns anos.
CNH. I work
Aqui como
with
convidado para
dams
poder
for
acompanhar.
some times, and I'm here as a guest
Arthur
just to
Tidel.
follow. Arthur Tidel.
Boa tarde, pessoal. Eu
Good
sou
afternoon,
engenheiro ambiental,
everyone.
tenho
I am
doutorado em
an
recursos hídricos,
environmental
sou consultor independente,
engineer.
atuo na
I
área de
am
segurança de barragem na
independent
indústria há algum
consultant,
tempo já,
and I have worked with
também
them,
trabalhei
have
junto
been
com a
working with
ANA,
them
em
for
parceria
some
com a
while, and
Unesco,
I
para
also work with
monitoramento
ANA in
de
the
barragens.
partnership with UNESCO about
Aqui
dam
da
safety.
Conselho
So I'm
Ambiental
here
aqui.
to learn a little bit more with you.
O Tom Rocha.
Tom Rocha.
Boa tarde a todos.
Good
Eu
afternoon,
sou Otton
everyone.
Rocha. Eu
I am Otton
participo,
Rocha. I
né, dos grupos
participate
técnicos da
in the
ABNT.
technical groups of
Fizemos
AB and T. We had an
NBR
NBR
recentemente
recently
sobre
about
potência de barragens estou envolvido
dams, and
em
I
outros
am
assuntos
also in
relacionados com
another
recursos
topics
hídricos
related to hydric
e novas
resources
normas a serem
and new
publicadas.
normatives that will be displayed.
Nós temos dois participantes aqui
We
identificados
have
como
two
Alan,
participants
porque
that are
talvez usaram o
identified as
link
Alan
do
because they
Alan
have
e
maybe they
eu
have
não
used
sei
the
quem
same
são.
link of
Vocês
Alan, and I don't
podem
know
falar,
who
por favor?
are they. Could you please open your microphone and identify yourself?
Roseli Souza, sou assessora
Sueli
técnica na
Souza,
Casa
I am
Civil,
technical
trabalho aí
assistant of
diretamente com a
the
Cristiane
Federal Government
Batistone e
Office,
Sérgio
and I
Cotrim.
work together with Cristina Batistone and Sérgio Cotrim. Good afternoon, I am Maurício Cordeiro. I work with Alan in the coordination of a critical event, more specifically in the characterization of a vulnerability using data science.
Eu acho que cumprimos. Eu esqueci alguém?
I think
do
I don't
lado
know if
brasileiro?
I have forgot someone.
Adolfo tá aí?
Não.
Não, né? Então tá.
Agora podemos
Só,
passar para os colegas
Now we can
da Usace.
só
start.
ressaltar o Otton,
Just
que tá
to
ali,
highlight
falou, estava
Otton
falando um
that
pouco
is
baixo,
here.
ele está trabalhando com a Associação
He is
Brasileira
working
de Normas
to
Técnicas.
the Brazilian
Ele foi
Association
responsável,
for
coordenou uma
Technical
norma
Normative, and he
recentemente
was
editada
responsible
sobre
for the
estudos de
coordination of a normative
para
about dam break
análise de consequências de rompimento de
for
barragens.
consequence analysis
Então,
for
é um parceiro
this
que a gente já tem
document. Is a
trabalhado há muitos
partner
anos.
that we have
E o
worked for
Arthur foi
long, and Arthur,
consultor que
it's a consultant
trabalhou com a ANA também, né? Onde foi
that have
consultor da
also
ANA. A gente
worked with
convidou também um
ANA.
outro
So
consultor
we also have
trabalhou
invited
com o
another
ANBR, que é o
consultant that
Adolfo.
worked with
Talvez deva
AMDR,
lembrar.
Adolfo. Maybe
De restante,
he would access
são
the link.
pessoas mais vinculadas ao
So
governo
now we just
federal.
have other people that are
E pela
linked to
parte da
federal
Usace,
government, and from Usace
Temos só
we
mais o
have
Maurício.
Maurício está envolvido com o Atlas de Inundações
Mauricio
também.
is with
A nossa expectativa é que a gente
this
possa usar a ferramenta
flood
também para
part,
fazer
and our
consequências de
expectation is
inundações
also to use the
naturais.
software to work
Por isso eu
in
chamei.
natural flood
Perfeito.
consequences.
Então, do nosso lado,
So
primeiro foi
from
muito
our
importante,
side,
eu acho que
firstly, it's
muito
very
importante para
important for
conhecer
us
quem está aqui, porque
to
quando
know
nós
those
temos
that are here,
grande
because
desafio,
when
a
we
gente
have a great
precisa essa
challenge, we
colaboração
need this
com vários
collaboration.
órgãos.
So
E o senhor tem
in work with many other
sabe isso no Casa Civil, né? Então,
departments,
muito
it's
grande
important to
prazer,
have you
honor
here. It's a great pleasure and an
conhecer aqui.
honor
Então,
for
mas
us
agora
and
eu
for
vou
me to
passar
meet you
para
here.
nossa líder
Now I will transfer
estratégica
to
com
our
todas as
strategic
coisas da
leader
segurança da
with
barragem,
to talk
uma
about
pessoa
all
que
the
muito querida
things
para a
related
gente
to dam
também. A
safety.
Gabriela
She's the
Livers vai
dear
abrir para
Gabriela
nosso lado
Livers
do
will
Usace
open
agora.
our
Obrigado
side
para
from
você,
Usace.
Gabriela.
Thank you. Thank you, Gabriela.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gabriela Livers. I'm with the Risk Management Center of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I served as the technical lead for the dam safety initiatives that the USACE had within our collaboration agreement with ANA. And I just wanted to give a brief introduction to what we have accomplished during that collaboration and how we came to be here today in working with the dam screening tool. But through the time that we've collaborated with ANA, we worked on having some virtual workshops that were open to all ANA personnel and the dam safety personnel in the state offices. We've had 10 of those to date, and they've been extremely successful with having large rates of people calling in and being able to get that training. And those are then recorded and available through YouTube by ANA. So that was one of the objectives that we had of our collaboration. The second objective that we had was creating some templates of the dam safety plans that ANA has to make it easier for dam owners to be in compliance with the ANA dam safety programs. So that is also an ongoing activity. And then the last and third activity that we had is to collaborate with ANA in ways that we can screen the portfolio of dams in Brazil that ANA has is responsible for, to be able to evaluate and plan ahead and be able to look at the dams of highest risk. So during that objective is when we brought in our team, including Jason Needham, who's on the call here today, and Michaela Bittner, with the dam screening tool. The dam screening tool, I'm not going to get into a lot of detail because that's why Jason and Michaela are here, but it's really exciting because what we are able to do with the dam screening tool and the funding that has been provided by the Department of Defense is make it directly applicable to the evaluation of dam failures and the consequences of those failures in Brazil. So that's what we're here to present today, what our scope of work is and what our objectives and really mission is of making this tool applicable to use in your country.
Muito obrigado, Gabriela. A gente está muito animado para começar.
Thank you, Gabriela. We are very excited to start. So I think now we will ask for Jason Needham. We will start to talk about what is a dam screening tool up to now, how it works in the US, and what is the proposal. Let's talk about the internationalization of this tool and starting here in Brazil. So
você pode dividir seu tela, falar oi para todo mundo e começar seu parte.
All right, just making sure you can hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So yeah, thank you. Nice to meet all of you. My name is Jason Needham. I'm the lead consequences specialist for the Army Corps of Engineers Risk Management Center. And as Gabriela mentioned, also the lead developer for the dam screening tool. I sit in Davis, California, and apologies that my camera's not working. Just picture an average white guy with a graying beard, and that's me. Okay, so we'll jump in. Here's the problem statement that we are dealing with when it comes to developing the dam screening tool. And it's trying to get to the question of what is the lowest level of effort that we can use to generate credible risk results, with the concept that life safety is paramount. So within the Corps of Engineers, when it comes to reinvesting in our infrastructure, whether it be dams or levees, we really focus on reducing risk to life first. That's our primary decision metric. The economics, cultural, environmental, all of those concerns are also part of the decision-making process, but really this idea of life safety is paramount, is underlying all the stuff we do. When we talk about risk, we want to look at the three main components of risk. The first one is hazards here. What are the hazards and how likely are they to occur for dams? We really look at the loading against the dam. How often do we see high reservoir levels behind the dam? But we also have seismic loading in certain situations. So we'll talk a little bit more about how we come to an understanding of the hydrologic and seismic loading as I get further into this. Performance, so given a certain load, how high the water is against the dam, how likely is that dam to fail? That's what we talk about in terms of performance. And then consequences. If we have a dam failure, who's in harm's way? How susceptible to harm are they? And ultimately, how much damage and life loss do we think would occur? We combine all of these, and that's how we get to an understanding of risk. Just real quick to bottom line up front, the dam screening tool, it's a web-based application using cloud computing for engineering risk analysis that employs these state-of-the-art tools and methods. People have already talked about HEC RAS. It's a really commonly used tool across the world for doing inundation modeling, dam breach analysis. Another widely used tool is LifeSim, which is takes the results from that inundation analysis and comes up with the estimates of consequences, economics, and life loss. But importantly, it's not all just software we're out there running, right? There's engineering analysis that needs to be included. And so when I go back to that question of what's the lowest level of effort we can use to get to a credible risk estimate, that is that is really the art of putting together the dam screening tool, to be able to say, hey, here's data that is available, that we can expect to be available for the majority of dams that are out there. Here's the level of understanding in terms of engineering capability that is going to be available for most of the dams out there, right? So really having an understanding of the data availability and the expertise that's out there to run the dam screening tool is important when we're trying to put all this together. As many have mentioned, there's already a version of the dam screening tool out there. It's really just the consequences module, and it was launched late 2023. It's being used across the United States on dams of all sizes, large and small. And we did some pilot testing in Brazil on 4 dams. You should have a report on the outcomes of that. I know many of you have already seen some of the results of that. I'll touch on it briefly. Our goal is to have a full working version of this by the end of 2025. That will be fully capable in Brazil. There will be some issues that we need to work through, so we call it a beta version, but that's fully functional. And then we will work through those issues and make sure all the guidance and training and everything is fully fleshed out and have an official launch in 2026. This is an effort. We're developing it for use in the United States, obviously, but given this DORIC funding, it's given us the opportunity to make sure that everything we're doing is applicable in Brazil as well. A little bit of our philosophy when it comes to kind of scoping and putting it together, the dam screening tool, really the level of effort and flexibility. So we need to be able to generate these credible results with quote unquote minimal knowledge and information. And really what we're trying to do is make it as difficult as possible to get bad results. And we're going to do this through a combination of validation checks in the software and built-in user guidance that makes it clear what people should be thinking about when they're applying the dam screening tool and how to check to make sure the results are reasonable. We have this concept of erring on the side of safety. So the idea is if there's a lot of uncertainty in what you're doing, we want to err on the side of calling something higher risk than lower risk. If there's lot of uncertainty. By using that approach and calling something higher risk, then that will help us shine a light on it sooner and go and look at it in higher level detail rather than putting it on the backboard burner, calling it low risk. Again, there's an art to that. We can't just across the board say, well, I'm uncertain, because there's always going to be uncertainty, and call something higher risk. Otherwise, your results start to become meaningless because everything's higher risk. So again, that's part of the art of putting this together and really putting together the guidance so people can think through the application in a consistent manner and get those results that are defendable. The goal of this effort is really approximately a one-day effort for multidisciplinary team. So 2 or 3 people that have the broad understanding of the different aspects of dam safety and understand the dam in question can get through the entire screening in a day is the goal. That doesn't include some of the upfront work to gather the available data, and so there's a lot of variation in how long that might take depending on how hard it is to get the data necessary before kicking off the screen.
Hey, Jason, this is Colonel Williams in Brasilia. A real quick question for you, if I could, please.
Sure.
So you mentioned error on the side of safety. I understand the concept. You mentioned that it is a part of the art. Just wondering if there is a part of science that also feeds into that calculation based upon benchmarks that may exist to give you indicators. Over.
Not sure I fully following the question there.
Yeah, it's just a question about, so the concept of erring on the side of safety, understand that is a concept, but wondering about the types of data that helps to feed a decision maker's choice to classify something a bit higher in terms of risk rather than lower. Is that just a judgment call, or are there already benchmarks of data that would help the decision maker arrive at a subsequent decision?
Okay, yeah, I get it. A lot of that is going to be a judgment call, but we will have whatever data we can available for the issue at hand, to allow them to look at historic information and characterize it appropriately. And so let's touch on that a little bit more, because I'll be able to talk about that specifically when we get into the estimation of performance and
Thank you.
the decisions that are going to be made there. I appreciate the question. We also want it to be flexible, right? So a little more background is a lot of what we're doing here is based off of what we've done in the United States for levies for 15 years now. We have this levy screening tool that's been web-based. We made a major upgrade to it a couple years ago, and we're using that same framework and foundation to do the dam screening tool. One of the things we initially learned from the levy screening tool effort is, in our effort to make sure people didn't spend too much time applying the levy screening tool, we simplified all the inputs and made it really easy to put that information in. The drawback there was when people had detailed information available, we basically made them dumb it down to enter it into the screening tool. So this flexibility now is, hey, if you have detailed information, we'll let you input it and use the highest quality data available. And when you don't have detailed information, there'll be really easy ways to put in some coarse information to get the job done. So that's this flexibility that we're building into the screening tool. And then the goal is obviously to generate necessary data to meet the required purposes. And I think some of that we will continue to flesh out as we talk through the use of the dam screening tool and how you hope it's used in Brazil and what some of the outcomes might be, and if those are different than what we've already scoped out for use in the United States, that's something we would add in. But an example is being able to pull out system response curves directly from the tool that shows the probability of failure under different load scenarios. Yeah. So you can use those outside the tool if necessary.
So Jason, just real quick. So a system response curve is our estimate of the behavior of the structure under the loading that is being applied. I just wanted to make that clarification.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to just do a quick review of what is currently out there in terms of capabilities on the dam screening tool and the consequences module that's out there. This is what it looks like. Like I said, we did it for under a pilot program for a couple dams in Brazil. This is one of them. This is what the tool looks like if you log into it. But what I'm going to step back a little bit on is, with that goal of life safety is paramount, here's the basic concepts, the essential elements that you need to think through to be able to understand the potential for loss of life under a given flood event. And that's the initial distribution of people. Where are people located in the area where the flood is going to occur? And then how do they redistribute? So when will a warning go out? What will that warning say? How will it be spread? How quickly will it spread? How will people respond? How much time will they have to get out of the way? What's their evacuation potential look like? Flood characteristics, the arrival time, depths, and velocities of the inundation. The shelter provided by this final location. So if people are still there when the water shows up, what kind of shelter are they in? Are they caught out in the open? Are they in a mobile home? Are they in a 10-story concrete building? Right. All of people's ability to survive varies significantly depending on what kind of structure they may be in. And then fatality rates. Given all of the above, what's the likelihood that somebody loses their life if they're still there when the water shows up? So how do we get to this? There's this idea of the national structure inventory that we have in the United States. That's the initial distribution of people. Basically, it's a geodatabase, and every point represents a building and has the information we need in it about how many people are in that building, daytime and nighttime, what the building is made out of, how tall it is, all that information to help us get to the understanding of potential life loss. In the United States, we call it the National Structure Inventory. As part of the pilot program and testing the dam screening tool, we built out a Brazil National Structure Inventory. So you might see this concept of the BNSI. It's pretty rough right now. It was based on information that was available. There's documentation out there for that. If you're interested in it, it should be in the report you've already received. There's always going to be opportunities to improve it. We're always improving ours as new information comes available, but that's a really good starting point to get a rough idea of where people are throughout the potential inundation zone. For the redistribution of people, we have these basic inputs of, for the emergency management agencies downstream, what type of evacuation planning has been accomplished? How prepared are they for a flood or a dam breach flood or a non-breach flood? How aware is the community that they might have a flood risk? How effective will the flood warning be? And then how far in advance are people going to know that the water's coming before it shows up? That's this idea of a hazard advance notice. Flood characteristics. This is the arrival time, depth, and velocity comes from the HCC RAS two-dimensional modeling effort. And then the rest of it is all built into LifeSim. And I'll talk a little bit more about this fatality rate concept further on on a different slide. Okay, the dam breach modeling currently in user inputs are model area that the user just draws an area where they think the flood is going to go. That sets the boundaries of the two-dimensional model. It can be adjusted. There's some trial and error there. A dam center line that shows where the dam is, the breach location on the dam, and then a breach hydrograph. If you have a breach hydrograph already from an external study, you can just enter it in and you're off and running. This kind of gets back to something Clay mentioned in the intros about using this for just flood risk, not necessarily for dam breach analysis, right? We're calling it the dam screening tool, but as you can see here, if you go and put a hydrograph somewhere, it doesn't have to be a dam breach hydrograph. It could be a hydrograph for anything, and it'll set up a 2D model, run it, and you can do all the same computations to get an understanding of the potential consequences for that event. So you can use this outside of just the dam safety context if you want to. If you don't have a computed dam breach hydrograph, then there's readily available tools that are commonly used in industry to come up with breach parameters so that the dam screening tool, really HCC RAS, will simulate the breach and generate the breach hydrograph for you and route it accordingly. This is where it starts to get interesting is, okay, what other data is needed to run this? So we have terrain and land cover. Land cover is necessary to come up with the roughness coefficients that go into the 2D inundation modeling. But so along with the National Structure Inventory, the terrain and land cover come from our national databases, easily accessible and very consistent across the US. One of the issues in Brazil that we identified during the pilot testing is we can also get that same information, but it's lower resolution, 30-meter terrain data rather than what we typically rely on here is 10-meter. That could be an issue in some situations, especially when you're talking about some of the smaller dams, and that's something we're going to have to tackle. So one way around it is if you have higher resolution terrain, you can upload it. You don't have to use the one that's automatically pulled into the dam screening tool. But where that's not available, that's one of the issues we're gonna have to continue to deal with moving forward. To get to damage and life loss, like I mentioned, there's these required user inputs for emergency preparedness. You can select unknown if you have no idea, and there'll just be more uncertainty in your results for those. But no matter what, you have to provide an estimate of your hazard advance notice. How far in advance will people know that a breach is likely to occur, and when will they get an evacuation warning relative to when the breach occurs? And then from these national or international data sources, again, the structure inventory, and I already mentioned we created this initial version for Brazil last year during the pilot study. So what you see over here on the right is every one of these dots represents a building, and you understand what type of building it is, whether it's residential, commercial, industrial, number of stories, and again, all that other data that's necessary. And here's the results. You get dam breach. For your whatever scenarios you set up, you see estimates of life loss, population at risk, how many people are exposed to the flooding, fatality rates, structures inundated, damage estimate. All this comes out for each inundation scenario. And again, we went through this for the pilot testing, and there's a report out there, and I think overall it went really well. Okay, now jumping into what's coming in. actually, maybe I'll pause here briefly. Are there any questions about the current status of the dam screening tool and what's out there and what's available? Okay.
Eu tenho um comentário. Eu até perguntei para o Alan, o que vocês estavam
We have
utilizando
a
para
comment. We would like
as
to know what were
edificações,
you
né,
using to
uso.
identify the buildings
E ele falou que foi o
last years, and
levantamento
you
do
said
Google, né?
you use
Hoje, o
Google
censo
information. I asked
demográfico
to Alan
brasileiro, ele
today,
tá
demographic
trazendo
census
muitas
in
informações
Brazil,
O
it's
último
bringing lots
censo,
of
ele
information.
foi
So the
primeiro
last
censo
census we had was the
todo
first
completamente digital.
census
E
that
a
was
gente tem
completely digital one, and we have the
geográfica de
identification, a
cada
geographic
município.
identification of every
Então,
building.
e essas informações estão na
So
internet.
these
E
informations
tudo
are
isso que
on
é de
internet and
informação
they are
pessoal,
available. So
sigilosa,
we just removed
mas depois para os casos
personal
práticos
information
pode
for,
ser algo
but for
bastante
practical cases,
interessante
this may be
e
used,
talvez a gente
maybe something
talvez de
very
alguma forma
interesting. So
consiga
maybe
colocar na
we
ferramenta.
somehow
Eu
could
acredito
introduce
que
and
deve ter o
upload this
município,
in
o número de
this tool.
pessoas,
I believe you would
coisas
need
assim que
the address of this building, the number of people that live in that building or that work in that building. So I think this kind of information could contribute a lot with you.
Yeah, and so the details of how we put that together are in the report that we were provided a few weeks ago, but it relied on Microsoft building footprints, which are available worldwide to identify the location of buildings, and then we used whatever we could find that was publicly available on the census information to distribute people into those buildings. So I think I appreciate the comment. That's going to be something we need to work on this year moving forward, is how to refine that structure inventory that we've put together for Brazil.
So Jason, just real quick. So we knew that there had been a new census and we were aware that that information was out there, but it wasn't available to the Usace at the time that we were doing the case study. But that was probably something that the team can discuss with Alan and the ANA team on how we can get access to that information. We just didn't have it for last year.
Thanks, Gabrielle. Okay, so moving forward, how do we go from what we have now, which is the consequences module, to this full risk computation? So what you see down here is, like I said, the levy screening tool that we have out there running for over a year now in the newest version of it. That has all the different tabs available: the hazards, consequences, performance, and then the risk results. So I just be very clear up front, is we don't have it all figured out. We have plans on how to do this. We have a good example of how it's worked for levies, but dams and levies are different. So a lot of what you're going to see here are rough outlines of our plan moving forward. Some are more specific. Some of it we have figured out more than others, but that's part of this effort, is really coming to a final methodology for each one of these components. So that's where the interaction with this group is going to be very valuable, because as we come up with a proposed path forward, we need to make sure it's viable when it comes to application in Brazil. So the first one, hydrologic loading, and I'm going to let Michaela talk about this, just so you get a break from listening to me for a few minutes. So Michaela, if your mic is working, go for it.
All right. I've been working with Jason to develop the hydrologic loading, or the hazards portion of the DST recently. And the goal of this component is to develop a stage frequency curve, or a hazard curve, that annualizes probabilities to answer that question: how how likely are these reservoir levels likely to happen on an annualized basis. And what we've thought of so far is to come up with, have two different options to integrate this information into the DST, have a user supplied option, as Jason mentioned earlier. If there's a more detailed study that has been done about the dam, we want the users to be able to use the best available information. So we're going to have an option for people to just upload a stage frequency curve for the project. But if it's not if a loading curve is not readily available, we are planning to have the DST automate a stage frequency curve. And to do this, we need some data. So we have the terrain data and the land use data that Jason was talking about for the HEC RAS. We'll also need some soil data to help parameterize the model, to get the initial parameters for the model, and then a source of rainfall. So either a precipitation frequency curve that has been developed, or an estimation of precipitation frequency based on existing gauge data. So through the cloud, the HMS model, the rainfall runoff model, was going to be developed based on the data, and then the rainfall applied to simulate rainfall runoff results and to see the responses to help develop the stage frequency curve. One thing I forgot to mention is in this generation process, the model will generate rating curves, so information to describe the reservoir. It's how big it is and how water is able to get out. So I think, and then this information will be used throughout the whole risk process to estimate the risk of the project.
So Jason, do you mind if I make a quick clarification?
Go for it.
So I just wanted to clarify. So all the work that Jason and Michaela are talking about right now, about the updates that are being made by the DST, that is funded for the United States. So like, we've received funding from a separate entity, from USACE and FEMA, to develop the dam screening tool. And that's why it's really great that we've received these DORIC funds, because they complement the work that is already ongoing to make the DST applicable for use in Brazil. So I wanted to explain that all of this work that's being presented is being funded separately. And the DORIC funds really just take what we're preparing for the use in the United States for applicability in an international setting.
Thanks, Gabrielle. Yeah, I meant to mention that at the beginning. That's a good thing to understand. As for the hydrologic loading that Michaela just covered, thanks, Michaela. I did want to point out that we do have a version of this that is already working, that we're going to tweak to make it fit into the dam screening tool concept, but it's the rainfall runoff frequency tool that allows users to do a lot of this already and run HEC HMS in this cloud compute environment. So a lot of this has already been put together. We just need to repackage it for the dam screening tool. Okay, the next one is seismic loading, and really in areas where we think there are going to be the potential for failure to occur due to seismic loads, earthquakes, we'll need some basic information, and really the annual scenes probably for certain ground motions, like you see over here on the left, is the target for what we would need to support a risk analysis using seismic failure modes. So there's a lot of information out there on seismic hazards that we can pull in and use to help us understand the potential for large enough ground motions to cause a failure. But we also need an understanding of this elevation duration. So how often is the stage in the reservoir above a certain elevation, right? Because you need a combined large enough earthquake combined with a significant load behind the dam, typically to get to a breach that's going to cause consequences, right? If you have an earthquake and there's a dam with no water behind it, you're not going to end up with risk from that. So you need that combination. So there's this concept of a duration elevation curve that we will also have ways to generate or estimate for different dams. For performance, we talked about the system response probability. That's what Gabriela mentioned earlier. And really, for a given dam height, in this case, it's fraction of dam height, so from 0 to the total top of dam. For a given failure mode, what's the probability of failure given that loading? So that's what the system response curve is over there on the left. We're going to have different default performance modes set up in the dam screening tool. The user will select and say, yeah, I want to apply this one, and come up with a probability of failure for each one of these performance modes as they apply to the dam. Now, how do you get to that estimate? And really, we're going to use the concept of event trees. They're used widely throughout dam safety and levee safety to come up with probability of failures. And an event tree, just briefly, is the sequence of interconnected nodes and branches. A node is that uncertain event. So, hey, does a crack form in the embankment, or state of nature, adversely jointed planes, for example. And then the branches come from each node, represent possible events or states of nature. So it's a logical approach, often chronological, that goes from here's the load in the reservoir, here's what has to occur for this failure mode to initiate, here's the conditions that have to be there that allow it to continue and progress. Also takes into consideration whether people on site can intervene to prevent the breach, and then ultimately get to a breach. And this allows us to come up with these quantitative estimates for probability of failure. So if you've ever done a risk analysis, you know these event trees can get very complicated, and people can spend a lot of time putting them together and then doing the elicitation. That's the estimate of the probability of each of those nodes. So one of the things we've done in the levee screening tool and plan to do for the dam screening tool is to really simplify these event trees, come up with standardized ones that take a lot of that work that can get very cumbersome for higher level assessments, take a lot of that work out of it and make it a much more efficient process. Here's an example of what an event tree would look like. Hey, do you have an open defect, like a pipe or a culvert that goes through your embankment? And you start for a given flood loading. So let's say under full load with water to the top of the dam. What's the likelihood that you have high enough gradients to initiate internal migration into that open defect? Do you have an unfiltered seepage exit that allows the erosion to continue? Is there anything that might clog or stop that erosion, keep it from continuing? Is there anybody out there that would detect it and be able to intervene? And then ultimately, is it going to breach? Each one of these nodes, you would have experts in the room that talk through the probability of yes or no for each one of those nodes. But again, we're going to simplify this into initiation, continuation, progression, unsuccessful intervention, and breach for all the failure modes. And then the real art of this, like I mentioned earlier, is allowing people that have often minimal information about the dam, maybe just an inspection where they were able to get out on the dam and look at it, to be able to go through these assessments and come up with defendable, consistent results. So one of the important parts is the worst location dictates the performance rating. So anywhere along the dam, you identify, if you have a really long dam, you identify where you think the worst location is, and you apply the failure mode to that location. But then we don't ask you to come up with an estimate of probability. We're trying to simplify it into these nodal descriptors, where you say either I think it's likely or unlikely or neutral, and that means you have a lot of uncertainty. So for each one of these nodes, you'll go through and fill out the nodal descriptor that translates to a probability. But this is where, again, the art is providing the user guidance that says, if you have this condition, that justifies a likely rating for this node for this failure mode. Again, we have examples of this. We've done it in the levy screening tool for all the different failure modes, for all the different nodes. And it allows, again, people that don't have a really detailed engineering background, aren't them safety experts, to take available information and fill out these event trees and get to an estimate. The nodal descriptors, here's what it means, right? For likely, the assessor is reasonably confident that the physical process is being considered for that node will occur when, in this case, the levee or dam is loaded to the top. And then when you do event trees, when you're thinking through it, you're always, when you get to a certain node, you're assuming all the other nodes have occurred. That's just how event trees are applied. So that's maybe a little more detailed than a lot of you wanted to know about event trees, but that's what's going to be underlying the process of coming up with the system response probabilities, these performance curves that are important to understanding risk.
Well, and Jason, just super quick. So just to kind of give a little bit of context, when we are developing this part of the DST, we're also leveraging all the risk assessments that we have already done as part of our risk management in the United States. And we are looking for the failure modes that we see mostly in embankment dams and concrete dams. And we're able to calibrate these standardized curves with the information of a quantitative risk assessment that we have done at a certain location based on information of the dam. So like I know, the reason why I say that is I know that one of the main failure modes that is of concern in Brazil is overtopping. So overtopping, for example, would be one of these default failure modes that you could select. And then based on the knowledge of the materials of the embankment dam, it would establish that performance curve based on the information that the user puts in. And that all is being calibrated on the back end by the information that we have based on our portfolio. And that's one of the other things that we want to be able to calibrate for use in Brazil, for example.
Thanks, Gabriela. Yeah, that's good information. Okay, climate change impacts is also a piece of this. And really back to what Michaela was talking about earlier is the stage frequency curve, this loading curve, is kind of foundational for annualizing the risk. So what we will do is use findings from global climate models to rerun the HMS model, develop a new stage frequency curve, and be able to show how predictions of climate change may influence risk for any given dam. Okay, the next part of the scope was internationalizing the consequences. And I mentioned the idea of fatality rates earlier, and that's the likelihood of somebody dying when subjected to the forces of the flood. And what's underlying this is these fatality rates that you see over here on the chart on the right. And we break these down into high hazard and low hazard. High hazard, each one of those dots on that high hazard curve, that represents when somebody has lost their stability, meaning they've been swept away by the forces of the flood. That's whether they were caught out in the open, whether they were in a structure that was washed away, or whether they were in a vehicle that was washed away. We consider them all high hazard. And each one of these dots represents a specific historic event where we could identify a person or a group that was together, like a family in a house or in a vehicle. And we know that they had lost their stability, been washed away, and how many people died because of it. So if you look at this relative frequency of exceedance, in almost 50% of the cases that we identified historically, everybody lost their life. So if it was a single person, then that's obviously, if they lose their life, that's the 100%. But in some cases, there's families where all 4 people lost their life, and even larger groups. So as you move out here to the right, we've identified many cases where there were a few people together and half of them lost their life. That's what this 50% fatality rate means. And there's cases out here where people lost their stability and none of the people in that situation lost their life. That's where you get to this 0% fatality rate. So one of the questions that we were asked to address was, is this applicable outside the US? Are these all based on US case histories? And the short answer is no, they weren't all based on US case histories. It's wherever we could find the data to support adding another point, what we did. But just recently, to support this, we came up with a revision to these where we specifically looked for points outside of the US. So we pulled in a bunch of information from Australia and a couple other international incidents to add to this. And what we found was it made very little difference in the overall average fatality rates. It gave us more confidence, more points on these curves, but it didn't make a significant difference. And I want to use this time to add on to that, where we did a very detailed validation study of the Brumadinho dam failure. And that's the tailings dam failure. But we did a detailed validation of the life loss estimate using LifeSim, the tool that is built into the dam screening tool, to estimate what we think the life loss would have been and compare it to what actually happened. And again, it's really detailed. It used these same fatality rates, which there's a lot of question about whether the fatality rates should be the same for water versus tailings, and that's a whole nother issue we don't want to get into. But really, what came out of that was the results were very close, using LifeSim as it is with the fatality rate. So we're getting more and more comfortable that the approach we're using is applicable both within the US and internationally. If you can address each one of these essential elements and talk through those, it doesn't matter what country you're in, how people respond and their likelihood of dying when being swept away is about the same. And then the last piece here is the risk estimates. Once you fill out all this information, it'll run and come up with this risk estimate. And what you see here is what we typically call an FN curve. It's very common in dam and levee safety for portraying results. On the y-axis, here's your annual probability of failure, and the x-axis is the average life loss for that failure. And you can see it broken down by failure mode, which helps you identify which failure modes are driving the risk, which ones you'd want to try to remediate first. And then you see your total risk here. From a portfolio management approach, these can be very useful because after you've completed these for a lot of your dams, you can start plotting them all on the same chart and quickly be able to tease out which ones are the highest risk, which ones should you be focusing on your attention on first. So that's how we use these for portfolio management. Okay, I'm going to just cover some of the benefits that we see from using this type of approach. Efficiency, it's a web-based application. You don't have to do any downloads. You just need a username and password, and you're off and running. You don't have to download RAS. You don't have to download LifeSim, any of that. It's all available. Again, I already mentioned it's about a day effort is what we're shooting for. And it gives you an annual probability of loading, annual probability of failure, and then your potential inundation, what it's going to look like, economic and life loss results for a range of scenarios. Scalability, you can get there with minimal data requirements, but you can refine those inputs, provide more detailed information, and get better results to reduce that uncertainty. So that flexibility is built in. I think this is one that's important to try to prevent the dam screening tool from being a black box, right? Because the idea is you can get in there quickly, provide some information, get results. But as engineers, we want to know what's going on behind the scenes. And that's where our attempt to build in these industry standard tools like HEC HMS, HEC RAS, LifeSim, and Total Risk, people are automatically going to have some level of comfort that says, all right, at least I know what tools are being used to generate these. Then the question is, are they being used appropriately for the given situation? Are the inputs being provided correctly? That's a different study, or a different issue. But it also allows the user to download these models directly out of the tool, open them up. So if you're an expert in HEC RAS and you really want to know what's going on, you can download the model from the DSD, open it up on your computer, and really dig into the details. So that allows people this transparency. You can also upload, if you have a detailed RAS model and you want to take advantage of all the other components of the dam screening tool and come up with a risk estimate, but you don't want to use the simplified inundation approach within the DST, you can run your inundation analysis outside of the tool and upload the results to the dam screening tool, and it will use those for the risk analysis. And a little bit more accessibility, and I think this one is often just not understood well, is the accessibility and shareability is really beneficial for people that are doing portfolio management. All you need is a username and password to get into it. If you create a screening, you're the only one that can access it, other than an administrator like myself that's here to help with troubleshooting. And you can share it with any other person that has an account in the dam screening tool. So if you want to share your analysis, you can do so quickly through the dam screening tool, which makes life really easy. Because you don't have to upload your model to some shared drive and have other people download it and hope they have the same version of the software. All that stuff that can be very cumbersome. Through this web-based approach, it's all there on the web for other people to review your effort. It's really straightforward. So I think there's some significant benefits there that often go underlooked. Okay, that's what I wanted to cover today. That's a kind of a brief overview of the different aspects of what's going on. And I think the rest of this time we'd like to leave for questions.
So, and the dam screening tool has been made available to ANA. I believe Josimar and Rogerio both have access to it and have been able to look through it and use it and compare it to what we did for the case studies that we did last year.
A question, Gabrielle and Jason. This is Clay McCoy. One of the big benefits I see is that you don't have to have a bunch of servers here in ANA to run and store data. How, if ANA does say 50 dam breach analyses, how long would that data be stored, or what's the mechanism for having that on those servers or downloading to computers here?
Yeah, that's okay. A good question. I didn't really cover the whole cloud server compute thing. So anytime, say you run an HCC RAS model, it spins up a server on the Amazon cloud, runs that, and then stores all the information, and it's out there on our cloud storage server, and it will be there indefinitely. I assume it'll just be there forever. They're not going to go away. We have no reason to delete them currently. Really, when it comes to cloud storage, it's really a very minor cost compared to everything else that's going on. So those will be there indefinitely, but you can also, as I mentioned, download the RAS model and have it available, stored on your machine as is, and do whatever you want with it. Put it in your permanent storage, however you want, but the plan is for them to be accessible indefinitely.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we have a hand up from Sergio.
Obrigado aí pela explicação da ferramenta.
Thank you for the explanation about the tools. I have a question.
A ferramenta faz análise de
Does this tool make the incremental risk? Because I saw that you have the climate change information. Do you have any analysis about the rain comparison, dams, comparison with dams and a natural rain, for instance?
I will attempt to answer that, but I'm not sure I understood the question. I think your initial question is, does it do incremental risk? And how we think of incremental risk in the United States and what our tools generate and what the dam screening tool will generate is incremental risk is the additional risk. Sorry.
Desculpa, sorry, Jason. A questão
The thing is,
só para esclarecer a dúvida.
just to clarify your question, related to the information about the flooding hydraulic part, if you use incremental studies,
Se vocês na ferramenta tá alguma coisa
If
no
in
sentido,
this tool
qual
you have
seria dano
something for that, what
sem a
would be the
barragem
damage without
tendo
the
uma
dam
cheia
if
milenar?
I have
Como
a
exemplo,
millennium, just an
a
example, a millennium
barragem
flood,
rompendo num
the
cenário
dam
de uma
breached
cheia
in a
milenar ou ela rompendo num
millennium
sunny day, num
flood
dia de sol.
and
Você tem
it is
esse tipo de
breached in a
análise?
sunny day. Do you
Não sei se eu
have
fui
this kind of
mais
analysis? I
claro
don't
lá.
know if I
A minha
was,
questão mais
if I
voltada para a
clarified this,
parte hidráulica.
but my question
Quando
is more
se
to
os
the
cenários
hydraulic
consideram,
part. If
se é
the
um cenário sem
scenarios
barragem, com uma
consider
chuva
a scenario without a
extrema,
dam, with an
o rompimento
extreme
da barragem sem
rain,
chuva e o
the
rompimento da
dam
barragem
breach
com
without
chuva,
rain,
sendo um
and the
pouco mais
dam breach with
simplificada a
rain.
pergunta.
Just to simplify my question, do you consider this scenario in this tool?
Okay, yeah, I understand. So in this tool, the plan is to look at the full range of loading events. So from just your sunny day, how much water's behind the dam, up to a very extreme load, your probable maximum flood, some very large flood event, and everything in between. And then do those analysis with the dam breaching and without the dam breaching. And the difference there is what we call the incremental risk, the risk attributed to poor performance of the dam. We do not have plans to do the hydraulic analysis without the dam in place, meaning what would the consequences have looked like if the dam wasn't there versus with it there. That's not currently part of the scope.
Calvin.
Ok, Arthur,
Calvin, uma pergunta aqui da Cris. Depois...
There is a question from Chris.
A minha pergunta é
My
relacionada à
question is
probabilidade de
related to
falhas.
the
A gente viu que você
failure
trabalhou
probability. We see that you are looking at the historical record, the return times, and even trying to make an analysis about over the climate change. Here in Brazil, we have a scenario of have what we call a dam cascade, many cascades, many dams, one closer than each other. So my question is, if we will analyze the failure probability of a dam looking at the failure probabilities of the upstream dams, because sometimes the upstreams can breach and generate a minor flood, but with that volume that comes from them, that may cause an impact that may impact the probability of a failure in this dam.
Yes, so agreed. It's important to understand the risk associated with cascading dam failures. How we typically do it in the United States is when we look at a dam, we do this risk analysis. But when we look at the consequences, we look at the dams that are downstream and say, hey, if this breach occurs, is it likely to overwhelm the downstream dam and likely to breach it? And what are the consequences associated with that? So to address that specifically, we are going to build out in the dam screening tool the ability to do cascading dam failures in the hydraulic analysis. We are not planning on doing a risk analysis for an upstream dam and then also the performance analysis for the downstream dam as part of the same screening effort. The only way the cascading dam failures will show up is just in the hydraulic analysis if we choose to breach the downstream dam. Beyond that, I think there's some uncertainty in how we're going to approach upstream dam breaches and building the understanding of those into the loading, the hydrology, because ultimately, If you have dams upstream that breach, that just changes the likelihood of seeing different water levels in the downstream dams. We don't typically build those in to our analysis in the United States when we're doing those type of assessments. But that's something we could consider if we think that's going to be significant. And Gabriella, I don't know if you have something to add on that systems approach.
So normally in the US, like Jason is saying, if there's a dam failure of a dam upstream, and there is a dam in close proximity downstream, and that downstream dam overtops by 2 feet, we assume that the dam has failed. So from what you just mentioned, Jason, I think those assumptions will still be maintained within the DST. Did I understand that right?
Correct.
Yeah, so I think the applicability of failure of dams in series will be what I think would be needed in Brazil, where you have embankment dams in series and you have an upstream dam that fails and then creates this domino effect of those dams downstream. So I think we will be able to accommodate that type of failure. I think what Jason is saying is we would just have to have that go, no go, where it fails or doesn't fail based on if that dam is overwhelmed by a sort of limit, in this case, 2 feet of overtopping, for example.
Só para complementar em relação a isso, Gabriela.
Just to complement related to this, Gabriela, the return for you, I think the feedback for you, I think would be very important if you could include this capability in the system, because this is the most common case we have here in Brazil. The dams that have breach every year, most of cases that we have here are, we have the dam breach of minor dams, and in cascaded, as I saw, the system is very based in the idea that you simulate a dam each time. So to analyze the risk of that dam, if you could have in the system or adjusting the system and include different dams, for instance, 5 dams together as a set of dams, that would be what we need, because this is a kind of analysis that we don't have here. So we'll just get from one dam and then go to another one, make the HEC, and then another one. These are complicated analyses. There are some cases from the electric sector that I know they are done, but these are studies that takes months to be done. So if you could, in the same model, include different dams and analyze this joint risk, we may think how it would be done, but that would be very good if this tool could include that.
So
I really...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Gabriela.
Jason, did I understand correctly that will be that we would be able to do that?
In the hydraulic analysis, if you're looking at doing a risk assessment for a given dam, if there are downstream dams that you want to breach because you think this breaching of the dam you're looking at is going to lead to cascading failures downstream, you will be able to do that in the hydraulic analysis.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think Alan, we do have that capability to do that, and maybe in the way that it would be done in the US.
It's not currently available. Sorry, it's not currently available. That's one of the things we're building. Yeah.
Okay, but we will have that capability in the future, and I think one of the things to mention is that in the US, the risk of that occurring would be attributed to that first dam failing. And then leading to that cascading failure of dams downstream. But yeah, I think that the answer is yes, that capability will be available. And it would probably be a good case study to do as we're going through this process here in Brazil.
No, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so Colonel Williams again, just want to take advantage of what Mr. Allen, the comment that Mr. Allen just made. So it is attached to the question that I asked earlier, Jason, with respect to the judgment call versus data. And in this particular case, I'm just wondering whether or not, in the absence of the modeling or the analysis tool being included with DST at this particular moment. So you have a gap in time where the appropriate analytical tool, you're waiting for it to come online. My question earlier with regards to the judgment is just simply, so who's doing the judging and what are you doing the judging based upon? And so until you have an analytical tool that can assist you to be a bit more precise, what is, covering that gap, in this case for Brazil, but it could be applicable to any country. So who's helping to cover that gap in the meantime? Because what we're talking about are remote locations where you may not have the expertise resident in the area able to get to the area in significant amount of time. That's the nature of the question. I don't know if that's useful for what you were asking, sir.
Ok, a gente tem mais mãos online.
So we have
Acho que
more
o
hands
Arthur
up.
estava muito paciente
I
também,
think
então,
Arthur was very patient to wait. So Arthur.
Oi, pessoal. Uma pergunta
A
rápida aqui
question is a quick
sobre o
question
DST.
about the
Nós temos
dam
aqui
screen
ponto
to
de
this
começo,
DST.
o
We
ponto de
have a
começo da
starting
modelagem é a
point, and
barragem.
the starting point of the
Mas ele
modeling that
pergunta em
is the dam.
relação até onde a
But
gente
I
vai
question about
modelar,
until
né? Essa é
when
uma
you will
pergunta
model.
que acaba sempre
So this is a question
caindo em
that
cima dos estudos que a gente
always
faz no contexto de, bom, nós
comes
vamos
in the
até 10
studies we
quilômetros
make, because we
jusante,
said,
nós vamos
okay,
até 20 quilômetros jusante, nós vamos até
10
um grande
km
reservatório, nós vamos até um grande rio, né? Essa é a
downstream, we'll go
pergunta,
into
é a
a
pergunta que
big
fica, porque muitas vezes quando a gente
reservoir,
vai
we'll go
classificar uma
into a
barragem como
big river. This
inapropriada,
is the
se a
questions that
gente
remains
avança um
when
pouco
we
mais na
analyze a dam.
instalação, a gente
If
chega
we have
numa
to move
cidade, num
forward in this
vilarejo,
analysis,
e
we'll
tem
reach
um resultado
a
diferente
village,
quanto à
a city,
classificação,
to obtain a
né? Então,
different
essa é uma
result in the
pergunta que
classification.
também
So
acho
this
que
is a
vai
question,
vale um
and
pouco da
also I think
discussão
that it
sobre o julgamento do
comes
engenheiro que está
together to the
simulando, né?
judgment
Ele
of the
vai,
engineer
eu
that
acho
is
que vem até aqui,
simulating and
ou eu
say,
acho que
well,
vai
I
um
think
pouco
we
mais
can go
jusante.
through until
Gostaria
here, or
de
we can go
entender um pouco mais desse processo
downstream.
dentro
So
do
I'd like
DST.
to understand a little bit better this process.
Okay, I think the question is how far downstream to take the inundation modeling? Is that
Yes.
That's it? Okay. Yeah, so again, there's some art to that. Really, if you're doing this properly, you should be looking at, for a given event, given loading event, what does the non-breach inundation look like? And then what does the breach inundation look like? And then you compare those and you carry it as far downstream as necessary to where the difference between those isn't significant. So you're not causing incremental consequences by breach occurring versus not occurring.
Entendi. Então, possivelmente
I
pode
understood. So
haver uma
possibly we
possibilidade
may have a
de
possibility to
integração dos produtos do
integrate the
DST
products
com
of
alguns
DST
produtos
together
desenvolvidos
to
pela ANA associados
some
a
products
mapeamento da
developed
descarga
by
de
ANA
zonas inundáveis
linked
com
to
de 100
mapping
anos,
of
por exemplo, né?
flooding areas that
Então,
last for
entenderia ser
100 in the
algo
last
interessante
100 years.
sim.
So
Esperamos que
maybe
sim.
if this
Essa é
fusion would be
exatamente
possible,
o
that would be
motivo para
very
ter
interesting.
essa
We hope so. This is the
colaboração
reason
agora. Então,
to
acho
have this
essa muito
collaboration
boa
right
visão.
now. So this is a very
Gostei
good
dessa
point of
comentário
view.
também. E gostei
I also
também
like this
alguma
comment.
coisa da trial and error, né? Nas
It's
coisas.
something that we have.
Boa pergunta isso.
I think it was a good question.
Othon?
Autumn.
Eu queria fazer uma pergunta. Na verdade, não é uma pergunta, é uma
Actually, it's
observação,
not
né?
a question. It's
Eu
just a
entendi
comment. I understood.
a colocação
I understood
do Alan
the point.
em
I
relação
understood what
ao
Alan
estudo
said
de
about
estudo de barragem em
the
cascata.
branch, the bridge, dam bridge in Cascade, but
esse estudo é muito complexo.
this study is a very complex
Ser
one, and it
visto de
needs
uma
to be
forma
seen in a
muito particularizada por
very customized
cada
way,
estrutura que existe
because based
que
in
pode ser
each
rompida, porque se
structure that
você
already exists that
colocar
can
num
breach. Because
processo,
if you
né,
put this in a process,
único e sem
in a unique process, and only
critério
one
de
process without
verificação,
a verification criteria,
cada estrutura vai ter as
so
suas
every
seus
structure
modos de falha,
would
as
have
suas
its
deficiências, as
failure
estruturas de
modes,
investimento vão ter que
its
ser analisadas de uma forma
structures that
adequada,
may
podem
need
ser barragens de
assessed in an
concreto, pode
appropriate
ser de
way. It can be a
rocamento,
concrete dam,
pode
a
ser
cement
de,
dam,
né, de terra, de aterro,
can
né,
be
terra. Então,
an
assim,
overtopping, can
eu sou
be
meio
an
cético em
embankment, better to
relação
say.
a
So I'm kind
você
of
colocar
skeptical
uma ferramenta
in using a
que
tool
automatize todo o
that
processo
automatize all
sem
the
uma
process
interpretação
without an
localizada do
interpretation,
engenheiro
without a
em relação à
localized interpretation
possibilidade.
of the engineer
E digo
related
mais,
to
né,
the possibility of
uma
failure. And
análise
beyond
multidisciplinar, né, que
this,
a gente
this
tem
is a
que
multidisciplinary analysis that
verificar
we may
vários
check
ramos da engenharia, né?
different
Você tem o
stages of
hidrôgrafo,
engineering. We
hidráulico,
even in hydrological, hydraulic,
geotécnico,
geotechnical.
enfim, é importante
So it is
estar
important
atento a isso, senão a gente começa
be aware of this,
a
otherwise
fazer
we'll start to
estudo
make
que vai
a
fazer,
study
de
that
repente,
will
né, uma mancha de inundação absurda que não tem nada a
make
ver com a
have a
realidade.
flood
Se você
in
for pegar cada estrutura que pode
mark
sofrer,
that is not
né, esse
linked
processo
to the
de
reality,
ruptura,
and
entendeu? Então,
we
assim,
will
tem que
miss this
levar muito
breach
cuidado para a gente não ter
failure. We
né,
must be very careful
resultado do
with that
estudo
to do
que
not
seja
obtain a result of this
inadequado.
study that it's not
Essa é
the
a minha
appropriated
observação.
and expected one. This is my comment.
Yeah, it's a good comment. I think you're pointing out in reality can get very complicated to do these assessments correctly. And so that's when we're simplifying to do a screening tool. Remember, this is a screening tool. We have to make decisions on where we're going to simplify. So for how we would typically approach that for these cascading failures is look at the downstream dams and just come up with some basic criteria to when we say it's going to breach or not. Yeah, it's a downstream dam. It's going to overtop by 10 feet for a day. It's probably going to breach. Let's just breach it. But if it's just going to overtop brief for a couple hours and it's a concrete dam, then we'll say no, it's not going to breach. So we got to make some very simplified assessment approaches to be able to do this in a screening context. And we have to be very aware of when we make those simplifications, what's it doing in terms of the actual answer. And I think this gets a little bit back to what Colonel Williams was asking about, was this error on the side of safety. When we're making these judgments about whether a downstream dam is going to fail, and it's right there on the borderline, we would say, yeah, let's go ahead and fail it. That's going to inflate the risk estimate a little bit, but that will allow us to then say, okay, we need to go in and look at that one in more detail, because based on this screening level risk assessment, we think the risk is really high. That's driven by downstream dam failure. Let's go look closer at whether we really think the downstream dam is going to fail.
Rogério?
Só complementando, né?
Just to complement what was said, I think this tool is very appropriate. It's a very good one. The only thing is that we need to be aware and be careful to make a sensitiveness analysis. And to make this sensitiveness analysis, we need to know very well each one of the structures that can suffer a dam breach or failure. This is a point that I would like to raise here. We must be careful with that to do not go to the most simplified way and do not have an accurate result and work in a hypothetical way. Thank you. And just to complement this comment, this is one tool. This is one tool from our toolbox, and we are in a very important time now. since August 2005, where we have Katrina event. So we have done many courses, workshops, and research about how we could understand our risks. We started this risk assessment center, and now we started with our GKs, our leaves, or the performance with Katrina. And now we have this opportunity, a very huge opportunity to apply this in dams. So as I said before, we are in a very important time, because look what is happening here in Brazil now, with so many leaves that were so advanced in this area, and the problems that we have with dams. So the thing is so high to understand the risk, 10,000 events. So how we could filter this to understand these risks. So this tool is just one tool into our within our toolbox. So how we can complement this with the cascade effect, how we can understand the sensitiveness. So these are another opportunities we have. But our hope is that we can leverage the knowledge that we have with all the investments that we had in the US since 2005, and apply it with these realities that we have here in Brazil. So Katrina happens here in Brazil. If Katrina happens here in Brazil, would be the opposite. We would be here learning with you in this area. So the only reason that we have with these workshops and these resources, it's because of Katrina event. So let's make this partnership. Let's be together with that. We are very excited with that. So the collaboration is so important because of that. This is why we have the stakeholders together. It's a great honor for us to work with the Army and the civil defense in all these areas. So this point of view, to use all these resources for this tool in Brazil, yes, let's use these comments to implement, to also implement. I really like your comment, Otto, and also the other one. So I think Jairo has a comment.
Parabenizar aí, Jason, pela apresentação. ANA-Usace é grande
Congratulations, Jason, for your presentation. Usace is a great entrepreneur of leaves and the dams in the US, and you need to make a very criterious risk analysis to allocate these resources in the most efficient way. From ANA's point of view, National Water Agencies, we are not a dams owner. We are just concerned about the consequences. Of course, we want the entrepreneurs make their own risk analysis to allocate their resource in the best way as possible. Dr. Cristiane here, she is responsible by PAC, that is the one that invests money to the Usaces in Brazil, Codevasf, the federal public entrepreneurs that may consider some program to INCRA and the smaller dams. But what I'd like to say, Ana, for you, the dam screen tour already comes as a consequence. Life loss, this part, you are going to the probability part to complement the risk analysis and the consequence in analysis. So I would like to ask you if, for instance, and for Ana, that would be perfect for the entrepreneur to prioritize the resources of their resources and their budget in the right way, in the main investment to mitigate the risk. that would help Cristiana to prioritize her resources too. And even in this inundation mapping, because you would have the hydraulic probability, the probability is already there, and the consequence is the inundation we could have. So I think the tool itself will help, but it doesn't have the impact of the dam failure. The probability is already in the hydraulic event. It's pretty much simpler, and the tool already have this. So my question is for Ana, and this is something that is a plus for this, a bonus of this tool that would be very important for us. This is a bidimensional tool. It's more accurate than the one we use to evaluate the potential, the hazard potential that you have. It's the equivalent. We analyze the dam failure for sunny day as we analyze the potential hazard. So we do not run many scenarios sunny day. So my question is if we would have any specific feature of modeling, because all information would be there in the tool, in the DST tool that you will develop. Would it be possible to have a specific modeling for the sunny day so that would be quick and that would show the consequences in a quick way? You do not run so many scenarios. This is just a suggestion, because this is what would be used most here. Just a comment here is even why do we, even knowing how important this tool is, we invited colleagues from other areas because they are the ones that we use this tool in Brazil. It's not only for ANA, they belong to another federal department, so it is important. We have to support, but this is something that it's even more than what we need, but it's important for us to have another capabilities. Yes, I have the answer, but I will lead Gabriela to answer the questions. Please, Gabriela.
Well, I had my hand raised to bring up another point about what Mr. Roca brought up. I think Jason is probably best to answer that question because it's about modeling scenarios and capabilities.
Yeah. So yeah, the basic question of sunny day failures, that will be a common inundation that is part of all the risk assessments. People are already doing those as one of their common scenarios when we're seeing this applied in the United States. So to that question, that's going to be a very valuable part of understanding the risk is the sunny day inundation scenario. And I hate to do this, but I have to jump off this call. There was an earthquake in the Northern California, and there's a tsunami warning, and my wife's over there, so I need to go check on them.
Please stay careful, please.
Yeah, appreciate it, and we will talk to you soon, and I'll follow up through email.
A critical event is occurring during meetings of critical events.
And I'll stay on, Jason. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Please
you,
take
Gabrielle.
care, Jason.
Take care.
Stay
Bye.
safe. E só para complementar rapidinho,
just to quickly complement, then we move to next topic from Gabriela. One of the guiding principles that we have for this too, and Jason is adding its flexibility. Yes, we can add all the things that are very complex about the precipitations, modeling, HEC, RAS, but at the same time, if you already knows, we have this situation, we want to know what would happen or what is going to happen with this hazardous risk. You can implement this manually, and you can also see the answer. So you can also use this as a sensitiveness tool. In this context, the tool already have these capabilities to understand another situations also, but surely we have this opportunity, the flexibility. I think it's very flexible. It's the guiding principle that you have. Okay, so Gabriela.
So one of the things that I wanted to mention, and this is how the LST, so the levy screening tool, and how the DST will be used in our inventory, is that it also comes with checks and balances. So it's not like the user will just be able to put in whatever assumptions they deem necessary and attribute a certain risk to a dam and the work is finished. There will be some checking that is done and an organizational framework that evaluates that work and looks at the risk from a portfolio perspective. So, this is used as a screening. It'll be used to perform additional studies as needed. It'll be used to inform where we need to do additional studies. So I didn't want to give the impression that in the US, we're using this dam screening tool, and based on that information, that's where the analysis ends. Based on the outcome, it might lead to additional study. It might be lowered in the priority list if it comes out to be where it's a dam of low risk. If it's high risk, it may increase in priority, but it'll be a tool used by decision makers to make decisions from a portfolio management perspective. So although it can provide a lot of information for specific dams, it's also really valuable from a management of the entire inventory, as Jason was kind of alluding to, and when you can look at it in a graphical form. But it would be checked by other people, and it would have a process in which the results have to be presented to the decision makers to see what actions are taken.
Eu acho que é bem importante essa perspectiva, essa não é a final resposta, mas
I think this perspective it's very important to have a screening to filter this.
Acho que o Josimar também estava com a mão levantada, Josimar.
I think Josimar also raised his hand. So Josimar, please.
Acho que aproveitando que o Johnson já saiu, mas a
It's
pergunta
just
talvez fosse para ele, mas a ferramenta a gente teve a oportunidade de
Jason
testar
already
aqui na ANA, né?
left, but the tool that we have the opportunity to test here in ANA, and thinking about this application for Brazil, how all the difficulties we already have with the small dams. My question is, with the advance of these tools and the participation of the Army, if we cannot move forward and increase the topography that we have, this is a bottleneck that we have in these places. We are talking about whole maps from Brazil and scales that sometimes are not compatible to small dams. So we may look at this. We are talking about dams with 3 meters high and 50,000 liters capacity. And the mistake will be linked to this. When I talk about the classification mistakes, when you classify a dam and making it fit to the policy and everything that is included in this decision, what I think it's we have a very good tool, but we still have a lack of data to use this kind of tool and take decision on it over this information. Just to give you an idea, in ANA, we already have 1,200 dams and 900 of them are small dams. Many things are small, so apply this, my concern, to use this tool with a very basic topography information, 30 meters, this is what we have. So my concern is the input data when we have to use this data, these two small tools that has a high percentage, just to remind you about these details, to think about all this information. It's very important comment, and once again answering this and come back to the flexibility. If first you have more detailed information with a higher resolution and more detailed information for a specific area, you can also use this. You can input this information. We just have the more general information here, the perimeters. But if you have a better resolution, even better resolution, you can upload this information to improve the results. And this tool also, yes, it will be more accessible and as an application for some dams. So the resolution of this DTM, it's lower than the size of the dam. So you really couldn't have a higher value as the other dams with a higher risks and more consequences and more differences. So the scale is something important, but due to the flexibility of this tool, you can incorporate the information that you have that have a better resolution if you have them. So the guiding principle, again, is the flexibility of this tool. Thank you for that.
Eu poderia fazer mais comentário. Eu
I'd
acho
like to
assim,
make
a
another comment. I think
ferramenta
the
muito boa,
tool,
ela
it's
permite
very tool. One, it allows
uma análise até de
it to
sensibilidade,
announce
né?
a sensitiveness analysis
Diversos modos de
compared
falha
to
aí que você
different
possa
ways
analisar.
of failure that we
E
may
eu
analyze.
diria assim, já que
And
nós
I would
estamos
say
aqui,
that as we are already here
numa agência governamental,
in a
e a gente
government
identifica logo
agency
primeiro
and we
problema,
identify
dado
the
básico
first
é
problem,
fundamental. Não adianta
data,
ficar trabalhando
basic
com
data, it's
dado
something
com
critical. It doesn't
SRTM, que você não
work
vai ter
to work
resultado.
with
Assim,
SRTM because you won't
brincar
have results.
né,
It's
fazer de conta. Então, assim,
it's a fair
já que nós
table.
temos essa
So
possibilidade
as
aí,
we
eu acho
already
que o
have
governo
this
tem que
possibility, I
investir
think the
em dado
government must
básico,
invest in data, in
levantamento
basic
mais
data,
de todo o território nacional. Isso
to
tem que
map
ser
all
feito.
the
Alguma hora
national
vai ter que
territory. It
eles
must
vão
be
pagar a
done
conta se a gente não fizer isso.
in a time we have this
Não
done,
adianta
because
ter uma
we will pay this
ferramenta
bill if you
extremamente
don't do that.
poderosa
It doesn't
com
work
várias
if you have a very
possibilidades.
extremely
Se o dado
powerful
básico, que é
tool, if the basic data that is the
inicial,
pillar, the
ele não
initial
está
point, the starting
adequado.
point, it's
Né?
not
Então, a gente vai ter
appropriated. So
respostas que não são
we will get
assertivas.
answers that are not the
Entende?
accurate one.
Essa é a minha consideração.
So this is my concern and my comment. It's very important. Undoubtedly, this is very important. Answers to the answer of our modeling are the ones that are based in the information that we receive. So maybe this could be an opportunity to really have to use this mapping part with the big challenges that we really would like to use this tool with a higher value as possible. So this would help a lot.
Então, sim. Só queria agradecer
I just
as
would like to
apresentações.
thank you for the presentation. Apologize myself because I need to leave to resolve a safety dam system that is out of service and just depend of an okay from me to work again. So I have to leave. Thank you. Just a comment about this digital terrain. We do not use this. What we use, it's a model that that ANA has developed, but it's also based in Copernicus, that in this case give a resolution in around 30 meter. It has improved the topography aspect. We have some models in some states that use 1 meter. It's Pernambuco state and Santa Catarina, but as Otto says, And Josimar also make the modeling for small dams. Using this model, we have mistakes. And now we're using this partnership with the take advantage of the partnership with our army that has this cartography, IBGE. So unite efforts in the sense, because this is a tool that it's not only for dams, for hydraulic modeling, it works for many other activities, economic activities in the structures of the country, roads, and many other things. And the risk analysis of our other places can be done. So I think this is a very good tool. So it's a matter of have a task force to make this in the country. In the US, so what is it's 10 meters in the US. Our standard for the whole country is 10 meters. And the same in DF, some states has and another states no. So we may use use the information with a better resolution. So this is the opportunity. Otton raised his hand again. It's just a comment. You are talking about small dams, but it can transfer for big dams. Doesn't worth to have a topography of 30 meters of accuracy, and I will flood many places, or I won't flood many other places because I have a topography mistakes. This is a matter of save lives or not. So I would put this as an important thing for big dams to be also careful with that.
So as part of our case history, as part of our studies that we completed in 3 dams, we compared running it with the only 30-meter data and then incorporating the 10-meter data where it was available. And there were some differences in life loss. They weren't huge, but that is in the report that we provided to ANA if everybody wants to read that portion of it. So it does impact, but for larger dams, I think the impact will be lesser. But yes, that is something to consider.
Okay, essa discussão.
So this discussion, from my point of view, it was very useful, very valuable. So next stage is now ANA now, and the partners also have the scope of this work. So any comment, everybody would like to contribute. We will accept this. We can increase the scope based on your comments, and we really would like to be your partner. We would recommend the comments should be given to DEC and ANA, so we would consolidate them, and then later we can have future meetings about this. We are planning to determine the working scope with your comments until February, but we are still, as Gabriela said, we are still moving forward with our tools that the US is developing. But we would like to receive your comments. We are also planning and starting in February to have monthly meetings with ANA, DEC, and other partners that would like to participate. Once again, with a vision to maximize the value of this tool in Brazil. We will already internationalize this tool, but as how we can maximize this value here in Brazil, one thing that will be really important with that is what are the better data that we can implement directly based on this tool. So this kind of collaboration, I think, would be very valuable and fruitful. So we have meetings every month about it. And until the end of next year, 2025, this will be a data version that we can start using here in Brazil. We are also very excited with that. We really appreciate. I shared the document, the report with our colleagues that are online. I don't know if everybody has received this, and I asked them to forward their suggestion in the document beyond the ones that were mentioned here, so we can forward it to you. I just would like to make a last comments, and I'm waiting with Chris to return so we can close the meeting. You could see the proposal of the system. It advances a lot in the methodology of risk analysis, not only an analysis of consequences, an analysis of a failure. So we advance with the methodology of risk events. It's not something common in Brazil. We already have here in the video, in the technical chamber, we have advanced a lot. Recently, our board of hydric resources have approved a new matrix for hazard analysis and potential risks. This is a matrix that uses different points for different aspects of the dams. This is a land dam that has some score, technical characteristics. So this is a very different methodology of the ones to use this. And we have already participated in different discussions, and we always reach the same conclusion. It's very complex to use this risk tree. So my question would be, would that be possible to incorporate a more simplified methodology, as you say, to make this something more flexible? So when you talk to Josimar, in the sense to use the matrix itself that Brazil has for hazard classifications and consequences, so we may have our own classification, because I understand the risk assessment that will be the outcome of this model is a quantitative one, and it's a more sophisticated, even being still in this screening level, and can be checked later. It is in a more sophisticated level than the ones that we make in our classifications, but there are some aspects from the classifications that we perform that are not there also. So I don't know if that could be also possible. It's another suggestion, and that would widen even more the application scope of these two. For instance, in the consequence analysis, you have this thing of the probability of having a life loss. It's not something that we use here. This is 0 or 1, or we have a person living there or not. If there is a person there, it's a life loss. It's different than the population that is in a possible life loss risk. So there are simplifications that we make here that maybe could be in the tool, and then we would use this classification process. It's okay, we are including our comments here. So we will work in the scope that we have here, and we will update this scope also. But one thing that I really like about the point of view that Alan is giving is yes, we have this more complex methodology to understand the risk in a more accurate way. But all the stage during this as event tree loading, the user can include all the information he already has. So if you don't want a model to calculate the metrology, you can put yours. If you don't want to incorporate the performance, you can input yours. So I really like this point of view, because you have the opportunity to check and understand more complex things, but the user can always input the information he has, even if the information is simpler. So I like this flexibility. And I think we are moving to our closing part of this meeting. So I just would like to ask to Bruno, Chris, if they still have any additional question or comments, just to summarize this and close this meeting. I'm waiting for the contributions of these documents until February, when they will close the scope even
eles teriam reuniões
while
mensais
they are
conosco,
working, they
estão
will start to
convidando
have a
todos para
monthly meeting, and they
participarem
are inviting
da
all of us to
evolução
participate
desse
in the
processo.
evolution
Né?
of this
Vou
process.
compartilhar esse documento
So you
e
share this
pedir esse
document
retorno.
asking
Né?
this
É um
feedback
ferramenta que tem
to each
aplicação
one of
ampla,
you.
o
This
Rogério
is a
colocou aqui, para
tool that have a
empreendedores, tem
very
várias
wide
barragens,
application for entrepreneurs that have
precisam fazer planos de ação de
different dams and
emergência.
they need to make an
Deveria também
emergency action plan. I
fiscalizadores,
also
sabe,
would
Rogério,
like
porque
the
tem os fiscalizadores que
supervisors,
têm
because
milhares
the
de barragens para
supervisors, they
fiscalizar
have
também. Se
many
pegar a Bahia, Goiás,
um,
está com cadastro aí de
dams
quantas
to
mil barragens?
supervise. If you get Bahia, Pará, and
50
many others,
50 mil barragens.
they have
E para você
50,000
priorizar a ação de
dams. And to
fiscalização também, você
prioritize
precisa
the
ter
actions to
norte,
supervise this, you need some
precisa usar
guidelines, you
uma
need a
ficha de
north.
classificação
So if you use our
quase 30,
classification metrics,
40%
we have
tem
30,
potencial alto.
40%,
E
so
que
it's a
já são
high
milhares. Então,
potential.
a gente não tem fôlego para
So we do
fiscalizar,
not
precisa
have
também ter.
we do not
Então,
have
eu
people
imagino que
enough
ajudaria
and tools
também
enough. So I
nesse
think this
aspecto,
kind of
né?
tool
Na
would
questão
also
de
help us in
inundações
this
também,
aspect.
né?
And
Nós estamos
when we talk
fazendo
about
mapas de
flooding, the
inundações, identificar
same,
várias
we are
inundações
working on
naturais,
this.
né?
We are the
Também
natural flooding I'm talking about.
então tem várias
So there are
classificação
many
para o
applications
empreendedor,
being the
o empreendedor de
classification
pequeno
for the
porte,
entrepreneur, the
pode fazer
small
mais
entrepreneur
agilmente,
that
né?
can use
Uma
this in
avaliação
a
de risco
more
do seu empreendimento. O
quick
de grande
way, the
porte também,
analysis
como o
of
João
his
colocou,
entrepreneurship.
né?
Big
Pode
dams
estimular
also,
você usar dados
we
mais
can
refinados,
stimulate them
importante
to use a
também,
more
né? Dados de
refined data.
topografia,
It's
etc.
important to have the
Tendo esse
topography
dado,
data.
o modelo vai
So
incorporar
once you have this data,
então
you
tem
can use
inúmeras
this in the
aplicações
model.
aí.
So
E existe essa
there are
abertura, eu
many different
entendi,
applications,
da
and
parte de
I
vocês
understood that
de
there is this flexibility from
incorporar
your
sugestões
side to
nossas,
incorporate our
exatamente.
suggestions,
E
right?
ter sistema
And
flexível,
have a flexible
adaptável às nossas
system and application
necessidades.
adaptable
Então,
to our
era isso,
needs.
mas queria ouvir aqui
So
Bruno e
that's it.
Cris,
I just would
para a
like to
gente ir
hear from
fechando.
Bruno and Chris so we can
Respeitando a
close
hierarquia, eu vou
this
falar
meeting.
primeiro para a Cris poder
Respecting
fechar.
the hierarchy, I talk first.
Alan, eu reforço a preocupação
Alan,
do
I
Rogério
reinforce the
com relação
concern
a
that
acredito que também
Rogério
se aplique
mentioned,
mais para os
so I think it
empreendedores.
will
Isso não
also
quer dizer que a gente não tem
applicable to the
interesse em desenvolver a
entrepreneur. It doesn't
ferramenta,
mean
pelo
that we are
contrário,
not
é muito
interested
importante
in
para a gente
develop
também
this tool.
participar
On
disso.
the opposite, it's very important for
Mas
us
uma
to
preocupação
participate
que
in
eu
this
sempre
process,
trouxe, eu já
but the
deixei
concern
lei, o
that I
Josimar também
always
falou,
brought,
são com
Josimar
nossos
also
dados de
said,
entrada, que
is
realmente
about
tem muita
our entry
fragilidade.
data that
Óbvio que a
it's
gente tem
our weak
trabalhado, como foi falado
point.
aqui também dos
Of
dados do
course, we
IBGE, a
have
gente
worked
tem
here with
o último
IBGE
censo
data.
foi todo
We have the last
georreferenciado, então
census where
você tem todas
was
as
all
residências com população, então você
georeferenced.
tem mais
We
dados
have
do que nós
all
tínhamos no
the
passado,
housing. We have
razoavelmente
more
recente.
information than we have in the past.
Contudo, a gente tem muita
However,
dificuldade
we
com a
have
informação
too
das
much difficult
barragens.
with
E
the
eu
dams
acredito, Alan, diferente do que você
information
está
that are
pensando aí, eu espero
available.
estar
And I
errado,
think,
certo?
Alan,
Não,
differently than what you think, and
a
I
gente
hope
nem
I'm wrong,
consegue usar a
we
ferramenta, por
cannot
exemplo, para
use the
priorizar
information, for
as
instance, to
52 mil
prioritize
barragens
the
do Goiás, porque
52,000
você teria que
dams
aplicar
in
para
the
cada
state
uma.
of Goiás,
E é
because we
humanamente
should apply
impossível você
this
aplicar para
for each one
52
of
mil
them.
barragens.
And it's impossible to
52
apply
mil
this.
dias, né? Que o Jason
We would need
Pois é, então a gente vai
52,000
ter que
days to
comprar assim, um
apply
monte
this for each one,
né,
just in
brincando,
one
né, um monte de
state of
robozinho de
Brazil.
engenheiro para poder fazer,
Joking, we would have
fazer isso.
many
Então a gente tem desafios
robot
que
of
são em escalas
engineers to do
distintas.
that. So we have some
É uma coisa que a gente
challenges
tem
in
que
different
enfrentar também,
scales. This is something
porque
that we
hoje
have
na
to
nossa
face,
política,
because today
você
in
falou
our policy,
40%, eu
you
tenho medo que
said
seja muito mais do que
40%.
isso.
I think it's
Então
pretty much
a gente
more
vai
than
classificar algumas
40%.
barragens, eu estou
We are
aqui com
mentioning
algumas
some dams, and
classificações,
I hear
inclusive
with
para
some
saírem, que a
classifications,
equipe do Rogério fez,
even
mas são barragens
classifications
de
that
20 mil metros
Rogério's
cúbicos,
teams did,
barragem de
but
10 mil metros cúbicos,
20,000
é
cubic meters,
uma piscina um
it's
pouco
a
maior,
pool.
que deu DPA
It's a
médio, ou
swimming
seja,
pool
deu risco médio, ele está dentro
that is
da política,
in a medium risk,
certo?
so it's
Então,
into
quando a gente
the
começa a
policy.
aplicar
So
isso,
when we
quando
start
tiver
to apply this,
saído do nosso passivo,
once you
e
leave
só das
our
barragens federais são em torno de
assets
1.200,
in
e for para os
just
estados, 52
federal
mil dos
dams,
Goiás, mais de 100 mil no estado do Ceará,
1,200,
como é que vai ficar essa métrica? Como é que vai ficar?
100,000
Será que
dams
todo
in
mundo
the
vai entrar na
state of
política?
Ceará. How
Não é
will
isso que o
this
legislador
metric
queria
work?
quando criou
Will everybody be
a
in these
política, porque se
policies?
tudo
This
está
is
dentro da
what
política, acaba você não tendo como priorizar, mas enfim.
the
É uma
Congress was
discussão
thinking
mais
about,
ampla, né?
but
Você acha que demora,
when they create this
mas a gente
policy, this is a
preciso só pedir
wide
para a presidente ter
discussion, but
Licença, mas isso não é isso.
Basically,
Obrigado.
is it.
Coronel, você queria fazer uma
Colonel, would you
passo a
like
palavra
to
pro senhor antes
use
e
the
depois falo com a Cris,
floor, and after you, I will give
Eu
the
não tenho
microphone to
muito a
Chris.
acrescentar.
I don't have much to add related to what was said about, yes, the Army has the Board of Geographic Services. It is held in the headquarters of our Army, and this board has different geographic centers, for instance, in Olinda City, Rio de Janeiro, that maybe can have some materials, some data collection that could be shared with ANA and any other government agency. So maybe you can you can consult this and check the possibilities to sometimes make it a centralized execution term for topographic data collection and have a deeper study. So you can help with that. From my side, just to thank you for your partnership, and we are at your disposal for anything you need. Thank you. Perfect. So we just would like to also thank you, and we can now close this kickoff for DST. I see you all again next meeting. Thank you, Gabriela. Thank you for those that are online, and we'll keep in touch. And we'll give you the feedback about this project. Thank you very much.
Obrigada, boa tarde.
Thank you.
Abraço.
Obrigada.
Abraço,
pessoal.
Tchau, tchau.